I would like you all to blame Robbie for the 1 minute delay. I was sitting here dutifully waiting.
No, you were shuffling papers. It sounded like you were doing important things.
I was shuffling papers purposefully. Yeah. I said, Robbie, where can... Okay.
You said no such thing.
You know what? I'm going to set aside our differences and jump right into the matter at hand, which is returning to the reading of the real McCoys. Let us please first consult the agenda for March 19th, 2020. Greetings.
Oh, greetings.
Hello, friends.
Everyone.
We have missed you in these long
3
hours.
minutes while Matthew had to run down to the bathroom.
Apologize for changing the time and swear that it will never happen again. Guys, I'm sorry that we threw you off. We're going back to the regular time tomorrow and for all the days to follow tomorrow, which is Saturday and Sunday. We're going to be with you on the weekends. Okay, we're just going to plow right on through. 1 o'clock tomorrow for story time, 1:30 for a McCoy's time. Yeah. Just stick with us. We're sorry. We're testing your resolve. We shouldn't do that. We should treat you better. We'll try.
Hi, Kylie.
All right. Get right to it.
Oh,
get right to it. I think that means read the book, but let's see. I don't know what get right to it means. Robbie, get right to it. Should we?
What was that?
Swing and song and sass and sway and... No, that was not good. You tried. You tried. We both didn't succeed.
Can't even have a growth mindset.
You deserve better than that. Okay. Let's see. Get right to it. Robbie tells you a secret. What's something they don't know?
Wait, I tell you guys a secret?
Yeah. Robbie tells you a secret. Or me. You can interpret that how you want to. It's an ambiguous item on the agenda. Who are you going to tell a secret to? You're going to whisper it in my ear, which would make them feel bad. Oh. Or you could tell them, which would make it not very much of a secret anymore.
You close your ears. I'll tell them the secret.
Okay. All right. Do I go... Don't
do that. Don't do that. Then they can't hear my secret.
Well, what am I supposed
to... Close your ears. Like a normal person. When I was younger once, I used all of my allowance money, and I bought a giant stuffed animal pig from the Finishing Touch up the street, which was an art supply store, and for some reason they had a giant stuffed pig. And my parents had told me I was under no circumstances allowed to spend my allowance money, and I did it, and I had to hide the pig, and it successfully hid in my room for about 2 months, and then not 2 months, 2 weeks, and then I was discovered and I got in big trouble. All right.
Am I supposed to pretend like I didn't hear that?
Oh, did you hear that?
I mean, without going na, my fingers are not strong enough. So how did you hide such a large stuffed animal in your room?
Yeah, I had to put it under a sort of like pile of pillows behind a chair.
That's very furtive of you.
I know, I'm
furtive
not usually...
means sneaky. Well, here's the question I have. Robbie and I have been together for 20 years. I want to know if there's a large stuffed animal hidden somewhere in this house that she hasn't told me about.
You've just never found it
Because obviously she has the skills that she needs to hide an extremely large stuffed animal from otherwise discerning, observant people.
I did get to keep the pig.
Where is it?
It's over at Bob's house.
Are you sure it's not somewhere like in my drawer or something? I don't know. Let's see. All right, Robbie told you a secret. Now, remind people where to find previous readings. Yes, if you are joining us midstream, you guys, because today we're going to read Chapter 5 of The Real McCoys, you can go to the YouTube page, and there is a channel. What is it called? A slot, a category. There's a place on the YouTube channel that is just for The Real McCoys chapters. Yes. We named them by the chapters we read in that video, so if you want to catch up, you can. Of course, if you have eyes and the ability to read and a copy of the book, you can catch up that way as well. But just wanted to let you know.
Someone asks,
yes,
who's Bob? Bob is my dad. We call him Bob because he does not like to be called Grandpa.
No.
It makes him feel old.
So it was not until Kato, our son, was 6 years old that he realized that Bob was his grandpa. Somebody said, "Where's your grandpa?" And Kato said, "What do you mean my grandpa? That's Bob." And we were like, "That's your grandpa." And Bob's like, Kato said, "Bob's my grandpa." So you need to be specific with certain descriptions for children. That's what I will tell you.
We just never thought to tell him that Bob was his grandpa.
Because we knew. Yeah. Anyway, right. Well, look, somebody's helping here. Bob is Robbie's dad. Yes. Thank you for doing our work for us. If there's any other questions you can answer on our behalf, please feel free to. Okay. Remind people where to find previous readings. Read Chapter 5. Yeah, because some of you are just tapping your toes. One of our friends, whose name is Sid, her daughter listened apparently to the first 6 minutes of our reading yesterday and was like, "Oh my goodness, you guys are reading too slow." Took the copy of the Real McCoys, went to the couch and read it for 4 hours. So we just, you know how the spark gets the engine firing? You know what? I don't even know if it was the speed. I think she just wanted to keep going.
She was inspired. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I don't want to put words in her mouth. All I know is she kept reading. We don't know why. She may not have been inspired. She may have been disgusted.
For Denise, we are going to read the whole series. Yeah. So yes, we'll get to book 2 as soon as we're done with book 1, and then we'll read book 3. So
may I point out that reader, C. Albright has tremendous taste because this person says, it's my favorite book ever. I want to say I find that a flattering and reassuring compliment. Yes. Comment. Yes, thank you. Shall we dig into this book together, my friends? Robbie, please make us get small.
Oh.
Yes.
Right, I forgot that's what we were doing.
Make the pictures get big. Okay. Chapter 5, The Crime of the Century. Guys, this is where it gets real, all right? Principal Jones' voice sounds different than it usually does. A little bit sad and a little unsure, as if she's trying to figure out what to say, which isn't like Principal Jones at all. She is usually entirely certain of what to say, as if she has been practicing for days. But then she continues, and suddenly it all makes perfect sense. Someone has stolen Eddie. He's gone. For a second, all of us are too stunned to even breathe, and then there are a few loud gasps. At first, my mind is blank because I can't quite believe what I just heard, but then it hits me like a renegade asteroid slamming into a lonely moon. Someone stole Eddie. My Eddie. Our Eddie. I can't help but think about Milton. I don't know if there's anyone in the world who loves Eddie more. Milton does everything he can to be like Eddie at every moment of every day, and probably even when he's sleeping. Other than not having wings or a beak or a monocle, Milton even kind of looks like Eddie. Across the room, Megan Lacey is actually crying. I understand where she's coming from, but I'm too mad to cry. Stealing Eddie is like punching a puppy or your own little brother. And even though I sometimes feel like punching Milton, or at least pinching him, I never ever do, and I never ever would. See here the Detective Code of Honor. No punching. No punching a puppy. No pinching. No pinching a little brother. Never. Principal Jones continues, we're going to get to the bottom of this. If anyone has any idea what happened to Eddie, I want you to come tell me right away. For now, get back to your work. Eddie would want us to go on learning. We hear the crackle and the buzz and jump just a little and then sit there in silence. Even Mrs. Bunyan looks a little bit lost. But I know exactly what needs to be done. There are times when it's important to follow the rules and times when it's important not to. This is one of the important not to times. Disaster has struck, the school is in peril, and clearly I am the only one with the courage, patience, and wisdom to set things right. Eddie needs me. Milton needs me. Tiddlywump needs me. I will catch the crook. I will find the owl. I will save the day. I start by raising my hand. Mrs. Bunyan looks over at me with exasperation. Clearly, she was looking forward to getting back to her tooth talk. Yes, Moxie? I have to go to the bathroom. I know, from reading all 58 volumes of the Annabelle Adams Girl Detective series 37.5 times, that it's important to get to the scene of the crime as soon as possible, when the evidence is fresh, before the clues are swept away. In case you're wondering, Annabelle is basically the number one kid detective in the world. She's only 12, but she solves every problem single-handedly. I do not know why she does not use both hands. I guess she's just that good.
I'm going to interrupt.
Yes.
Someone is asking, what does exasperation mean?
Oh, please, Robbie.
Exasperation means a little bit of frustration that something is happening and you're just, you're like, you're tied up in little knots inside.
Yeah.
Is that a good description?
Very well done. Very well done. Yes. I pretend that I am heading toward the bathroom, but after making sure that no one is looking, I tiptoe back down the hall by the cafeteria and through the part of the school where the kindergartners and first-grade classrooms are. The little kids are busy crying and asking for hugs and blowing their noses that no one is paying attention to me. As you might expect, I move undetected, like a silent shadow mixed with an invisible lion. Which means I have no problem making it back to the lobby, where Eddie's empty case is waiting for me. It might be the saddest, loneliest, most awful thing I have ever seen in my entire life. But, as Annabelle Adams says, a crime scene is not just a place where something awful has happened. It's also a place where justice can be found. Because no matter how careful, every crook leaves clues. It is my job to find them, and I have only moments to do it. And so I survey the scene, jotting notes in my tiny blue detective notebook. Eddie's case is surrounded by velvet ropes, like the kind you see at the bank or the post office. The ropes are there to keep kids from actually touching the case. Basically, to keep Eddie safe from excitable kindergartners.
Wait.
We told the people watching in the last one that I got a terrible night's sleep last night. And when I have a terrible night's sleep, I make spoonerisms where I mix up words. I also say things like bopes instead of popes.
Instead of ropes.
Ropes.
There are some bopes around.
Apologies, friend. Sometimes Robbie lets things go gracefully by, and sometimes she insists on sticking it to me.
I mean, so I couldn't just sit here and laugh and not explain it.
The ropes, not the bopes.
Not the bopes.
Are there to keep kids from actually touching the case. Basically, to keep Eddie safe from excitable kindergartners who want to give him a hug. This is an actual problem. Eddie is extremely lovable. It's clear by looking at the poles that hold up the ropes that somebody has recently moved them. One of them is out of place. On a normal day, the ropes are very carefully and symmetrically positioned because Mr. Hammer is so good at his job. So, whoever stole Eddie wasn't being very careful, which means the thief was in a hurry, which means he or she is probably not a professional bank robber. This is an important piece of information, and I write it down. There, on the case itself, I see another clue, a greasy thumbprint, right next to the knob you would use to open the case. I know the thumbprint must belong to the thief because I remember seeing Mr. Hammer cleaning the glass just this morning. I make a sketch of the door and the location of the thumbprint. This will be critical evidence if the case ever goes before a skeptical jury. But I am looking for a third and final clue. In my experience, it is extremely difficult to solve mysteries without at least 3 clues because, as Annabelle Adams proves in Volume 3, Third Time's the Charm, in which 3 banks are robbed simultaneously by 3 bandits who are actually triplets, and she apprehends all 3 in the span of 3 hours at the request of Glenwood Perkins III, each crook makes at least 3 mistakes. I look around for anything that stands out, but there is nothing. Everything else is completely ordinary. I hear the familiar whistling of my favorite custodian as he comes down the hallway. I shove my hands in my pockets to look casual and wait for Mr. Hammer to turn the corner. Hey, Slim. Hey, Marvin. I'm looking for clues, I say, before he has a chance to ask why I'm not in class. What sorts of clues? Anything that will help me figure out who stole Eddie. Do you know that he's missing? I do, said Mr. Hammer. I certainly do. When was the last time you saw him? Right after school started. I was walking down the hall to the art room and saw Eddie in his case. Did you give a friendly wave? It's what I would have done. Mr. Hammer smiles. I certainly did. As I came back up the hallway a few minutes later, I thought I heard footsteps, but when I turned the corner, no one was there, and the case was empty. So, Mr. Hammer was the first one at the scene of the crime. This is important information. I'm tempted to gasp, but detectives do not gasp. And so I say, I see, which is something Annabelle Adams says constantly. She must have excellent eyesight. Was there anything around the case? Blood, maybe? All I found was this, says Mr. Hammer, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a bright green hall pass. I take the hall pass, trying to pretend that it's no big deal, but I know right away that this could be the third clue. I do not let on that I have basically cracked the case, but my inner Annabelle is doing somersaults. I see, I say. Where did you find it, if I may ask? Right under the case, said Mr. Hammer. Just the tip of it was poking out. I take the hall pass. It has today's date. That much is clear. But as I try to read the name on the pass, the handwriting is so twisted and horrible that it could just as easily be Leon Magruder or Abraham Lincoln. As I puzzle over the letters, my very best guess is Fungoy Poppelknot, but I'm pretty sure there's no student at Tiddlywump with that name. Is it important? Mr. Hammer asks. Possibly, but it's far too early to tell. Thank you, Marvin. No problem. Good luck, Slim. Marvin, before you go, I have to ask, can you ride a unicycle, either with or without your eyes closed? Mr. Hammer is so darn nice that I decide to give him another chance. I might be able to overlook his feelings about slugs if he turns out to have remarkable balance. Never tried, but I'm guessing the answer is no. I am disappointed, of course, but only a little because today I am a one-person wrecking ball of problem-solving fury. I can't let missing Maud make me lose my edge. My search for a new best friend can wait until the crisis has passed. I give Marvin a little nod, and he gives me a little nod, and then he pushes his handy rolling mop bucket back down the hallway. He does not seem to notice or care that I still have the hall pass, So I decide not to tell him that it might be the single most important piece of paper in the history of Tiddlywump Elementary. I'm taking a final look at Eddie's case when I hear more footsteps coming down the right side of the hall toward the library. I have just enough time to stuff the hall pass in my pocket and put on my most innocent face before Principal Jones comes around the corner and almost knocks me over with her long, dark stare. "Moxie McCoy," she says. I am tempted to remind her that people call me Slim, but it doesn't seem like exactly the right moment. "Principal Jones," I say, trying to be very relaxed and normal sounding. "Why aren't you in class?" she asks. Not super suspiciously, but not super not suspiciously either. It is a reasonable question, but one I am not prepared to answer. I dropped my pencil," I say, holding my pencil and realizing as I do that as an excuse for being absent from class, it doesn't quite hold up. "Do you have a hall pass?" she asks. At Tiddlywump Elementary, being in the hallway without a hall pass is like being in outer space without an oxygen tank. Of course," I say, handing her my hall pass, before realizing that it's the one Mr. Hammer found under Eddie's case, and not the one that Mrs. Bunyan wrote for me. As Principal Jones squints at the hall pass, I consider whether it's better to run for it or play dead. Getting caught with someone else's hall pass would probably earn me a trip to the eel tank. Luckily, however, Principal Jones doesn't seem to be having any more luck than I did figuring out whose name is written on it. "Does Mrs. Bunyan teach you penmanship?" she asks. "Of course not," I say. "Penmanship is for first and second graders. You would think Principal Jones would know this." She nods and hands the hall pass back to me, apparently unable to prove it isn't mine. "I'm assuming you're on your way back to your classroom at this very moment." "Absolutely." "Before you go, I just have to ask, do you have any idea who took Eddie?" It's just a simple question, but the way she says it makes me feel like all the bones in my body have suddenly turned into cottage cheese. I understand why she is asking. As I learned from Annabelle Adams' Girl Detective, Volume 46, again and again and again, sometimes criminals return to the scene of their crimes to rub their hands together and cackle maniacally while enjoying all the trouble they have caused. But Robbie, you're a very convincing cackling criminal.
Yes.
But I am not a criminal. "Principal Jones," I say, as deadly serious as I've ever said anything in my entire life, "I do not know who took Eddie. I consider the theft of Eddie a serious crime, not only against our school, but against the ideals of courage, patience, and wisdom for which Eddie stands." Principal Jones looks at me as if I've just sprouted an extra eyeball. Then her gaze softens a little, and I can tell she believes me. "All right," she says. "I hope you understand that I had to ask. You can take your pencil and head back to class." She starts to turn, but I stop her with my words. "One more thing." I can tell she's surprised that I've spoken at all. People don't usually say anything to Principal Jones until they are invited to do so. "Yes," she says. Her voice is not entirely friendly, but I am feeling rather brave. "I intend to figure out who did this, and when I do, I will bring that person to you. For justice." I say justice in a sinister whisper to let her know I mean business. Principal Jones gives me a little nod, which basically means, "I believe in you, Moxie McCoy, and I know you can do this. Tiddlywump Elementary is lucky to have a student as courageous, patient, and wise as you, who was also an insect named after her." Then she turns and heads back to her office, probably to tell Mrs. Breath to learn to read to Leon from the Oxford English Dictionary until he tells her what planet he was on. As I walk back down the hall to Mrs. Bunyan's classroom, I'm struck by a realization so powerful it makes me nearly 2 inches taller. As sad as I am that Eddie has been stolen, this is also my golden opportunity to prove to Principal Jones that I'm even more amazing than the amazing Emily Estevez. Finding our missing owl is going to take every ounce of courage, patience, and wisdom I can muster. But if I can pull it off, the Eddie Award will be mine. Dum, dum, dum! And that, my friends, is Chapter 5.
All right.
So, yes, Robbie, what do you have to say?
There were some questions in the course of this, and I'd like to answer some of them.
Please, let's do it, yes.
So, somebody pointed out, I think Justin maybe asked, why are some of these words in red?
Ooh.
That was very observant.
Excellent, good point.
Here's the thing.
Okay.
When Matthew wrote this book, this file, this printout here that you're looking at, is actually the last version of the book that we had before we sent it back to the publishers to make it the final printout of the book. And I needed to show the publishers what words we wanted to fix. So I marked them in red. So there were a few words left. Oh, so here. So, in a sinister whisper to let her know that I mean business. So I don't know what you had written before.
Maybe it was to let Principal Jones know.
Right.
And we changed it from Principal Jones to the pronoun her.
Right.
Because it was simple at that point.
Sometimes it's very, they're very tiny tweaks that you're making at the very end of things. So, very observant. Good job.
Good work.
And then somebody else noticed, here, they're like, what, is she the president now? This is the best thing about drawing Moxie. Moxie imagines herself in so many different ways. This is not Moxie, like actual Moxie. This is not real life. This is sort of Moxie's imagined world where she is being a patriot and she's doing great things and she's saluting and she's taking charge and she's feeling very strong about herself.
So a lot of the times when Moxie is talking, she is using metaphors and similes, which is using figurative language, which is using language that is not literal to help you describe.
And literal means it actually is what it says.
Right.
So if I say, I am a tree, that would mean that I actually was a tree. That is if you took it literally.
Right.
If you say figuratively, I'm a tree,
it means she's strong and steady and
I'm not moving.
So I sometimes use metaphors to describe how Moxie sees the world, and Robbie is using a visual metaphor here. Moxie's not actually standing on a mountain with a big flag behind her, but that's how she feels.
Yes.
Robbie wants to show you how Moxie feels as she says that.
Yes.
All right.
And,
Next question, Robbie.
Yeah, well, then somebody asked,
how are we doing on the time?
Are Moxie and the principal friends now? We don't know. I mean...
We're pretty early on in this book, you guys.
Moxie seemed to think that she was getting friendly with the principal, but we're not sure.
Principal Jones is a force to be reckoned with, you know? Yeah.
And then there were some people who, have read the books. Ella, thank you for encouraging no spoilers.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Fungoid Popple this is one of my favorite things about Matthew.
Oh?
He comes up with things that are so strange. I don't know where that came from. Where did Fungoid Popple come from?
I don't know, Robbie. Don't ask me to explain my inner workings.
I think that is the funniest name ever, and I love it. And I love that Principal Jones is so flummoxed.
Well, I needed a name that could look plausibly like the person whose hall pass it actually is.
I think that's not true.
Oh.
I think you made up Fungoid Popple,
and then I retroactively
had to figure out how to make it look like
culprit. You see how it actually is. At the very end, somebody asked for another secret, but they didn't say who should tell the secret, whether it was you or I.
I don't know. It's not on the agenda, you guys.
Oh, okay.
We can't just bust the agenda.
Okay, fair enough.
Wide open.
Let me see if there's anything.
Why didn't you make Eddie a different animal?
Oh, well, I don't know. Again, I had to make a decision at some point. I think that happened pretty intuitively.
I think we actually went to, I think we've been to a couple elementary schools that had owls. I think it's because owls are wise.
I think so.
And so a lot of times people like to associate education,
right,
which is school, with owls.
That's a very good explanation for what I think I did not think through that clearly, Robbie. I was very intuitive about it, and so... I think that's a very good explanation.
And then El Puppy had a joke.
Okay.
Because El Puppy's been very good about providing jokes.
Let's hear it.
All right. What has 4 wheels and flies?
Oh, goodness. A flying car.
Wrong.
What? What is it?
A garbage truck.
Oh.
Like flies. Like the flies that go bzzz.
I get it. That's good, El Puppy. That's good.
All
right. What do we have here?
All right.
Oh, I love the book so much. Thank you for reading it aloud. It's awesome to hear it read by the author. Oh, thank you. That makes us super happy. How long did it take you to write the book? I think it took about a year from when I first started writing it to when I had the final words to hand to Robbie. But so you know, I did not write every day for the year. A lot of the time an author is waiting because an author is sending the book off to their editor. And the editor is the person who helps the author make the book better by giving them feedback, by answering questions, by saying, this part works, but this part could use a little strengthening, or I wish there was another plot twist here, or are you sure that you want this giant chicken to run down the hallway at this particular point? It doesn't seem very believable. So the editor of this book is named Erin, and she works in New York City. And so I would write a draft of the book. A draft is just a version of the book. I'd send it to her. She'd read it. She would send it back with comments. So while she's reading the book, I'm just waiting and I'm working on other things.
And this is an important thing. For those of you who we've not done a school visit for, we tell students this at school visits.
Yeah.
Part of the writing process is showing it to other people and getting feedback and changing it. So when you're working on a project at school, when you're working on a piece of writing at school and you turn it in and your teacher gives it back to you and it has some marks on it that says, I don't think this is right, or maybe you should think about this, or maybe change this here. That is part of the process. All of the professional writers, all do that. Nobody gets it perfect the first time, or the second time, or the third time, or the fourth time. It takes lots and lots and lots and lots of revisions. So it's important to know that if you are getting lots of marks on something that you're doing, that you're trying to get a piece of writing right, it's just making the writing better, okay? So don't feel like you're not doing it right. You're doing it exactly right. That's how all the pros do it.
Thank you, Robbie. And Robbie, similarly, does not get her illustrations right the first time. No,
that's true.
She goes through the entire book and does sketches of the entire book.
In fact, I was looking at this and I already see a couple things that
you would fix?
That I would fix.
Oh, but you know what? You keep getting better at doing the thing you do.
I do.
Yeah. So I have written 6 novels since I finished writing The Real McCoys. And so I think I've gotten better. So somebody asked, are you writing a new book right now? So right now I am working on the 3rd book of our new series, which is called Cookie Chronicles, which comes out basically a year from now. It is about a boy named Ben Yokoyama, and in every book of Cookie Chronicles, he gets a new fortune cookie at the beginning. He reads the fortune, and he's like, oh my goodness, this is the smartest thing I've ever heard. I'm going to follow this advice as closely as I can. And Ben, like we were talking about being literal before, he takes it very seriously. So in the first book, Live Each Day as If It Were Your Last, is the fortune Ben gets. The book is called Ben Yokoyama and the Cookie of Doom. He takes that fortune very seriously, and he spends the day doing everything he's always wanted to do and solving problems and saying sorry and doing things that one must do if one has not much time left. The book I'm working on right now is called Ben Yokoyama and the Cookie of Perfection. And the fortune is, what is the fortune? I am very tired, you guys. Practice makes perfect. Okay? So Ben is convinced that he can become perfect if he practices enough at all sorts of different things. So right now, the book is with my editor. I have written the book. She sent me some comments back. I've made revisions. I sent a new version back to her, and it's her turn now to read it. So I'm not working on it right now, but time is passing because it's her turn. And then when I get it back, I'll work on it some more, and then we'll send it to Robbie.
Wow, that was a long question with many diversions to answer the question, how long does it take to write that book?
I did start by saying about a year, Robbie. For what it's worth,
You answered the question, and then we went.
I think Robbie dragged me into the middle of the highway.
All right, 2 more minutes. What's left on the agenda?
Okay. Kylie, I like hearing you read. Kylie, we just like you. So it's really great that we did something that made you happy. Thank you. We did some virtual hugs on the last one. I want to do some virtual hugs for you guys too. All right. No. Okay. Robbie's not feeling that.
I know. I want.
All right. So we answered questions, and then the last item is question answers. So that's where you guys say, I'm not sure.
I don't think that was a good answer, Matthew.
Answer questions. It was a little bit of an inversion. It was a sleight of hand. It was made to be enticing and intriguing.
Was it enticing or intriguing? I did see earlier that Miranda is working on a new snake book, so that is excellent news.
Excellent. Yes. All right, that's exciting.
We have a snake book that we sent to Miranda. It's called Marvin.
We'll read that one of these days in Story Hour.
One of these days at the 1 o'clock time slot.
Oh, look at this. We have love coming our way. I love you guys. We love you guys. Thank you. Hey, here's something you guys can do if you're having fun. If you have friends that you can't hang out with because they're somewhere else right now, tell them about this. Have your parents send them the link, and you guys can sort of hang out together while we read to you. You can chat to each other while we read to you. This can be a way for you to spend time with your friends.
Did you say how long it takes for Robbie to illustrate the book? It takes me a year, but I am usually illustrating much of the time.
In fact, the second this ends, Robbie's going to shut this down, and she's going to work on illustrating Cookie Chronicles 2, the book that will not finish being illustrated.
It was, you guys, I missed a deadline.
But there are many extenuating circumstances, including school being closed and lots of things. So we are being gentle with Robbie. We are looking forward to Robbie being done.
So much.
So we can eat salad together.
Robbie is looking forward to Robbie being done.
So it'll happen soon. Can you guys send Robbie some positive energy?
Yay,
can you say, Robbie, we believe in you. You can do it. That actually will make a difference to Robbie. All right, El Puppy, I'm so glad you love this. Tell your friends about this because we would love to include as many people as possible in this fun. We appreciate you. We will see you tomorrow at 1:30 or at 1 o'clock if you want to do the whole thing. Story Hour is fun too. You guys, I know you're big and tough and strong and cool.
We had a bunch of these people at Story Hour too.
Come join us, all right?
I mean, Story first half hour.
We will see you tomorrow.
Thank you for coming, guys.
Bye, friends.